For this video, I want to go over some basics with the 1.0s and 1.5s. That's a little different than the OLEDs. These are coming cheaper and cheaper on the market for those players looking to pick up a used gun. This gun as well has a Parker solenoid as my 1.5. And you'll notice with the 1.0s and 1.5s, they have a feather touch, or the later 1.0s and the early and 1.5s on, have a feather touch retention hole. So you can take your feather touch screw out and place it in there to hold it. All new Luxes have that. However, on the early guns, the only way to access the feather touch screw was you have to take the frame off, and you have to access that by the manifold with the frame off the gun. And I'll show you that. I'm going to pop the frame off this gun. And what you always want to do, and this goes to if you have snap screws, only put them on the speaker side of the gun. Do not put your snap screws on the eye side of the gun. The reason being, I'll show you here, and this has been gone over in the DLX videos that are also on YouTube. So feel free to check out DLX's YouTube site as well. You want to pop these grip screws out. And the reason why you do not put snap screws on the vision side is right here in the grips, there's a cutout. Sorry, right here. There's a cutout for where the eye plug on the board sits. If you put snap screws in there, the grips will move and potentially become loose enough to the point where you can move your grips enough to knock this plug off the actual board. And then you need a new board, and no one likes that. So basic maintenance, basic tips for taking off your frame from your Luxe. I've seen people try a gajillion different ways to do this. Some people can figure it out. I've seen other people do some damage to their guns doing this. So what you want to do is, first off, your solenoid, you want to unplug your solenoid from the board. Make sure that's free and clear. Then your eyes. Don't yank the eyes. Slightly grab them on the side and remove. Then you're going to take your Allen key for your grip screws, your grip frame screws, and break them free. And it doesn't matter which order you take these apart at. And then when you go to remove your frame from the gun, make sure the eye wire is free of the channel and that your solenoid, you're watching your solenoid wires. A general good rule of thumb I use is to pull them out, break the frame free, and slowly pull the frame and the body apart. Inspect the inside of your frame, make sure it's nice and clean. You can check with your trigger as well. The way to adjust your triggers, if you have any side-to-side slop, and I see this in a lot of used Luxes that would come for repair, is you want to check and make sure that these conical screws, you need to work them in with the frame off the gun. And you need to watch from the top of the frame and make sure your trigger is centered in the frame. If you push it too far to one side or too far to the other, it's not gonna work freely, and it's gonna bind. And you don't want it to bind because the bearings, you can damage the bearings and the trigger. Now, with a feather touch, a lot of people ask about the feather touch on the Luxe. 1.0 and 1.5s, and all Luxes, the feather touch is located here on the manifold. Is that top screw. Now, to get to it in the 1.0 and 1.5s, you have to remove the frame. In the 2.0s and 2.0 OLEDs, you do not have to remove the frame to install or uninstall your feather touch screw. Underneath the Luxe, as you can see, the eyes, you route them in that channel. I've seen plenty of Luxes as well that are all bound up. That's not good. And you always want to make sure, always check this O-ring here is a urethane O-ring. I've seen guns that have used Buna O-rings or not even the right material, and that can cause a lot of issues and leaks. With the Luxe, a cool thing too as well, if for users that don't know, some people have covered this, right here is a manual fire button on your solenoid. So hypothetically, if you ever have any leaks, if you're running your gun without the frame and you're using a standard regulator ASA setup, you can charge the gun by holding that button and it'll push the bolt forward. That way you can tell if there's any leaks from the gun itself. Really cool little feature on the Parker. I enjoy it. And for reassembly, let's go to reassembly of the frame. You want to be very careful. I've seen this a couple times. I saw it happen at Cup. Right in here, this is a 2.0 board. Right in here by where the solenoid plugs in, there's a diode that's marked D1. If that diode is knocked off when you're reinstalling the frame and the body together, if the solenoid hits it and you pinch it off, your gun will not function with the feather touch or feather touch screw in. I always say be careful of that. The gun will come out, you'll shoot, it'll shoot fine, it'll sputter and drop off, start puffing, and a lot of times you'll pop open the grips and that D1 diode's missing. So we want to make sure that you're very careful placing the gun back together. I always lead with the solenoid wires, let them dangle out, go with the front of the frame first, watch that you're not hitting that D1 diode, make sure your eyes are not pinched up, adjust as needed. See how it sits right in. And with the eyes, I've seen a lot of people just let their eyes dangle. I always plug them in. And then here on the side, there's a channel. So you can press them down in that channel and they'll lock in. Then you have to go to plug your solenoid in. Use an Allen key or a pick. Just be very gentle pushing the plug in. Now with reinstalling the frame to body screws, I generally start with the back. Do not use the bent side of your wrench. Always use the straight side. And lightly screw that in. Don't crank it. And make sure it's nice in there. Then go to the front. And too many times I've seen people crank them down and they strip out the aluminum that's especially in the back side of the frame. If that is stripped out, it won't hold and your gun will leak. It will not seal. And the only way to fix that is to get a Healy coil, which you have to send the gun into the factory for, or worst case scenario, you have to buy a new frame, depending on how much damage you do. But I make sure that's nice and tight and snug. And that's all you need to make sure it's held on tight.